Hi everyone, thanks for being here. So today we're going to have a look at the Elgato Camera Hub software using the Elgato Facecam Pro. So these are going to be some advanced settings. Whenever you get the camera, the default settings are not that much perfect in my opinion. You might get the best of it by changing the settings. So let's check what those settings are and how you can tweak it to get the best images for your videos or for your streaming sessions. So let's start and having a look at what is the interface of the camera hub. As we can see here, we have, whenever you connect the camera, we have all the information that you can change, all the settings that you can change on the camera, and you can save it directly to the camera itself, and the camera has a memory inside, so you can save all these settings inside the camera. So the preview is currently disabled. As we can see, we can click on enable preview here. So whenever you enable the preview, you are seeing what the camera is actually recording or is going to be recording or streaming. And here we have the grid for knowing on which section your face it is or on an object is placed and so on. This is important if you want to be precise on where to place yourself, on where to place objects, or when to place yourself and objects together. So for example, you want to be yourself here and an object here, or yourself here and vice versa, and an object in this place here. So this is important also for the focus. We will get to that in a minute. Here we get the input and the format that actually the webcam is recording or streaming. If we click here, we have some advanced settings. As we can see, we have the firmware version, which is the latest, by the way. I suggest you always to check the firmware version and update it, because they always add something and change something important. Here we can restore to the factory defaults if you want to restore to the factory defaults the camera, and it will reset all the settings that you have. And here we have the LED brightness, so if you want to turn it on and off, but I will suggest you always to leave it on, because in that case you are knowing that the camera is working or not. Here we have the inputs. As we can see, we have only the Elgato Facecam Pro, but if you have the Elgato Facecam, the normal Facecam or another Facecam Pro, you can see all of them here in this input submenu. So let's move to the submenu of frame. Here we can change the zoom of the field of view, and then we can drag and drop this blue square here in order to move the camera whenever we want. For example, let's move it here to this one, and as we can see here, we can change it on this place and we can move it as we want. You can save all settings on the presets, and then from here you can use those presets in certain scenes or in certain movement. You can change it here by sliding this one, or you can change it also by typing here if you want, for example, 100% or 200% of the field of view. As we can see, it's going to zoom and to change the field of view. And here we have this one, which is the face tracking. So whenever you are moving around, the camera will follow you using the zoom or the pan to follow your face. If you are in the frame of the camera and you're going to move yourself, this one is going to track your face. Whenever you enable this one, you cannot change the zoom and the field of view. As we can see here, we cannot drag and drop and do nothing, because of course the face tracking is using that kind of tracking and field of view, so you cannot use that one. So let's reset the settings and disable the face tracking. So as we can see here, we have, again, we can move and we can zoom and so on. You can move the pan and the tilt also manually if you want. You can move it by drag and drop this one, but you can move it also manually if you want. For example, let's say 50% on the right and 50% up. So as we can see, we can change this one. Let's reset it again, so we can move to the other submenu, which is the focus, which is important because if you want to have full control on focus, you might want to disable the automatic. And as we can see, the camera is not focusing properly. The objects we have the small one and the bigger one is not focusing properly. What you can do here, you can use the presets. We can use near, and the camera is trying to focus if the object is near to the camera itself, or you can try mid if, again, the object is in a mid distance, or we can try far, and the camera is going to try to focus the objects. If that is not working, because as we can see, actually it's not working, we can use this slider here on focus and we can change it. As we can see, if you slide it on left on right, the camera is going to focus, in this case, the biggest object as we have it here. You can also change it by typing numbers here, for example 10, or let's try another value and we will see, for example 25, and it's out of focus. So we know in this case, for example, let's try 10, and 10 is okay. So you can use the slider or you can use the numbers there. That is up to you. Whatever you are feeling comfortable, you can use to change this one. If you enable automatic focus, the camera is going to try automatically to focus on the object, on the person, on whatever you are using, and it's going, whenever that object or that person or that face is going to move, the focus is going to try to automatically focus, which is okay in most of the scenarios. But if you want to have a more control, or if you want to have one of the presets using the focus, pan, zoom and tilt, you can use the manual one, and then from there you can change all the values here by moving the sliders here. In case you are enabling the automatic focus, what you can do is change between center weighted and spot. Center weighted is mean that whatever is here on the center, the focus is going to immediately focus. The spot is going to move and check which object and which face, for example, is going to focus. You can also lock the focus if you want. So whenever you're changing other settings, the focus is not going to change. So it's locked on this place here, on this object here, and is not going to change whatever you are changing other settings that might impact the focus. And now let's move to the picture settings. This is something important because whenever you're changing something here, it's going to change overall the quality of the picture that you are seeing. So for example, if I want to decrease the contrast, as we can see, we have this kind of washed image, which is really strange and really weird to see. And if we increase the contrast, as we can see, we have to compensate somehow because we are not bright enough. Even if I'm using a light here, we are increasing the contrast and then we are not seeing properly the object. If you increase the contrast, what you have to do is compensate by using the exposure. So we will get to that in a minute, combination of these two. So this depends a lot of what scenes you are using and which kind of room you are using the camera, if you have enough light, if you don't have light, if you have too much light and then you want to compensate with contrast and then you want to somehow change these settings. Anyway, if you change the saturation also, we can see the green and the red is going to become more green and red, which might be a weird effect. I find out that putting the saturation on 60% and the contrast on 55 more or less, we are good to go. And then what we have to change here is going through exposure, which is one of the important settings here. As we can see, this is automatic. If we disable the automatic, this one is going to be a lot brightness depending on what we change on contrast and saturation. So here what we want to change is shutter speed. There are some simple rules on the shutter speed, ISO and whatever. Some prefer to use automatic, some prefer to use double the value of the shutter speed and so on. You can start by using 120 seconds if you are recording or having a video streaming on 60 frames per second. Usually you want to use the shutter speed double of the frame. And the ISO, some use the same value for the ISO as the same value of the shutter speed or the double the number of the shutter speed for the ISO. That depends on you, depends on the camera, depends on the lighting, depends on a lot of things. So as we can see, the scene now here more brightness than it was with the automatic settings on the exposure. Probably it's a little bit too brightness, so let's change this one. Let's lower it because my light is really bright, so I will change the ISO to the minimum, which is 100. So as we can see here, if we change the contrast, for example, let's put it again to 60%, we are still having an amazing bright scene because that's depending on the light. But if I turn off the light, as we can see, we are not seeing basically nothing. If I turn on the light, as we can see, we have another brightness image here. You can play with contrast, saturation and ISO to check which of these values are the best for you. If you have enough lighting and the scene is too much bright, I would suggest you to lower the temp or the brightness of your light and anyway set the contrast and the saturation between 60 or 65. It works for me with this light. I'm using the Elgato key light here, so these values are those values that are working for me. But again, it depends on your light, so you can start with these settings and then change it accordingly to what you want to do and what you want to record or stream. So let's move to another setting which is also very important, which is the white balance. As we can see, again, here is an automatic, but we don't want that. We want to change it on our settings. So the white balance is highly dependent on the light that you are using. If you are using some lights, so it depends on the temperature of the light that you are using. In this case, I'm using a 5000 Kelvin light, so I'm going to change the value here for according to the light that I'm using. So as we can see, it changed the color, it changed the white balance. I have a white wall on the background so that you can check that how it's more warm and more cold depending on what you're using. You can use also the tint here if you have to color correction all the lighting, because if it's too blue or too yellow, you can use also the tint here, which in this case I will leave it to 0 because I don't want to mess too much with the tint. I want the temperature of the lights and the temperature of the camera to somehow work between them. I find out that 4400 for the lights and for the face of a human being is the more or less the perfect settings on your lights and on the camera settings here, as we can see. So these are some settings that you can use for color correcting and getting the best of it. So let's factory reset the settings and check the difference that we have here. So as we can see with the factory reset, we have a less brightness picture, not that much color corrected, let me say, and you are not seeing perfectly the scenes. So if we move back to our settings, you are going to see that this is completely different. So as we can see here, it's completely different and it's something really different from what we have seen on the frame before. So whenever you're changing these settings, remember to save it. So that's going to save it on the internal memory of the camera. So whenever you're moving the Facecam Pro from one PC to another one, or to a MacBook, or to whatever system you want to use it, then those settings are going to be saved inside the camera itself. So let's check some other few settings here on the interface. We have these other settings here where we can check the updates for the software and eventually the firmware updates, which are going to be installed using the same interface. Here we can check and uncheck this one, and we can change the snapshot location if we want to have a picture on what we are seeing. By using this button here, we take a snapshot of what we are seeing, and then it's going to save it on that folder that you were seeing previously. So here we have some interesting effects. If you are using this camera for meetings or for something else, we can use the blur effect, or we can use this other effect, or we can use other provided by Nvidia if you want. There are really plenty of effects. For example, this one is a kind of live video, so we can mirror and flip the image of the camera depending on how you are using this. So as we can see, the objects were moving from left to right, and we can flip it upside down. Nice effect here. And then we have also the eye contact. So wherever you are changing, this is a nice feature. I noticed that not always is working perfectly, but anyway, it's a technology used by Nvidia broadcast. So whenever you are speaking into the camera but your eyes are looking somewhere else, the viewer or whatever you are using the camera for a meeting or whatever, the person that is seeing you is going to see you that if you are looking them, not if you are looking somewhere else. And here we have another submenu for the teleprompter, which is another product used by Elgato if you want to use the teleprompter for the scripts, or for reading some scripts if you want to record the video, or for using for other uses also. If you are streaming and whatever, you can use it also as a status monitor if you want. So those are some really nice settings that you can start using depending on your scenario, and then from these settings you can try and change depending on your lighting and whatever. Just keep in mind the shutter speed and the ISO, which the shutter speed, if you are recording or streaming in 2060p at 60 frames per second, the shutter speed should be the double of the 60 frames per second, so 120. And the ISO, usually depending on your lights, but usually is you can start by the same value of the shutter speed or double the shutter speed. These are some simple rules. From there you can start using this one. And another important setting is the white balance. That should be the same as the white balance of the light that you are using for your environment. That's all for this video on the advanced settings on the Elgato Camera Hub using the Facecam Pro. So if you like this video, guys, please consider subscribing, hit the like button, share the video, and drop a comment and let me know your thoughts. Thanks for watching.